The night my daughter told me she was getting married tomorrow, I didn't even hear the word married. All I heard was sold. She called at 10:47 p.m., her voice full of excitement, breathless like she'd just run through rain. "Dad, it's finally happening! We're getting married tomorrow morning at the marina. Oh, and before you freak out, the house and the car paperwork are done. It's all settled. Mark took care of everything." For a few seconds, I thought maybe I was half asleep, dreaming through grief and static. "The house," I said. "What paperwork?" She laughed. That same nervous laugh she used to have when she'd broken a vase as a kid. "It's fine, Dad. Mark just said it was smarter to move things around before the wedding. You know, for taxes and stuff. The lawyer said it's cleaner this way. We'll handle the details later, okay?" The line went quiet, except for her breathing. I looked at the framed photo of her mother on the mantel. Mary in her sun hat, smiling under that oak tree we planted the day Lydia was born. The house still smelled faintly of her perfume when rain hit the windows, like tonight. "Lydia," I said slowly, "what do you mean by move things around?" "Dad, please," she said softly, "don't make this harder. You said once everything you have would be mine someday, right? Well, it's just sooner than someday. Mark's already filed it all. He said you don't need to sign because the deed's joint." That's when my heart stopped. There was no joint deed. I never added anyone's name after Mary died. Every year I paid the property tax myself, $4,181 in March, stamped and filed. I had the receipt in the drawer right next to me. My hands shook as I opened it, the paper smudged from the last storm when the roof leaked. "Lydia," I whispered, "that's not possible. That's my name. It's always been mine." She exhaled into the phone, long and tired. "Dad, I love you." But Mark said what? The line clicked. Silence. Then the automated tone. Call ended. The storm outside deepened, thunder crawling across Charleston's skyline. I stood, walked to the garage, and turned on the light. The space where my BMW X5 should have been sat empty, the concrete floor bare except for oil stains and one old wrench. I leaned against the wall, feeling the cold seep through my shirt. My wife's voice echoed somewhere deep in my memory. "If anything ever happens to me, promise me the house stays in the family," I whispered back to the empty garage. "It will, Mary. Just not like this." When I returned to the kitchen, the phone buzzed with a new message. A bank notification. Transfer verification. $42,500 pending. I sat down, took out a notepad, and wrote, "June 15th, 10:47 p.m. Lydia called. Wedding tomorrow. My house and car. Sold." Then I pressed record on my old phone and said it out loud, clear and steady. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. I didn't know why I said it. Maybe habit, maybe defiance. But somehow, it helped me breathe. Because if they wanted to turn my life into a story, then I'd make sure I was the one telling it. The night bled into morning without rest. I didn't sleep. I just sat in the living room watching the ceiling fan spin shadows across the wall. Every rotation sounded like a clock tick, counting down to something irreversible. When dawn crept through the curtains, I still had her voice in my head. Mark handled everything. The way she said it, so casual, like she was talking about a grocery list, not my life's work. I made coffee, though I couldn't taste it. The house felt hollow, like it had already forgotten me. The marigolds outside were bent from last night's storm, petals clinging to stems like they knew something was gone. I checked the driveway. Empty. The BMW X5 wasn't there. I walked down to the curb, half hoping I'd parked it somewhere else and forgotten. But no. All that remained was the imprint of the tires and an oil patch that looked like an old scar. Inside, I opened the drawer again. The one where Mary and I kept our life folded neatly into manila envelopes. Insurance, titles, taxes. The car title folder was gone. Just gone. No mess, no torn pages, no hint of a break-in. Someone had removed it carefully, as if they knew exactly where to reach. I sat down, gripping the edge of the table. My fingers brushed over the mortgage satisfaction letter from 2020, stamped and notarized, the one that said I was finally free of debt. Mary had cried that day. We toasted with cheap champagne and promised that this house would outlive both of us. Now it felt like a mausoleum. Around 8:12 a.m., my phone buzzed, a text from Lydia. Dad, please don't be mad. Mark just did what's best for us. See you at the marina. Love you, love you. Those two words used to carry warmth. Now they felt like formalities stapled to betrayal. I tried calling her. Straight to voicemail, I called the DMV title division next. The clerk's voice was polite but distant, the way people talk when they know you're about to break. Sir, can you verify the VIN number? I read it from memory. 30 years of owning cars. You start remembering details like that. A pause. Then she said, Yes, sir. The transfer request was completed yesterday at 4:32. 2 p.m. New owner, Lydia Ellison. My throat went dry. Who filed it? Authorized by a Mark Ellison. There's a power of attorney attached. I nearly dropped the phone. My daughter's signature. Fake, or maybe coerced. Either way, it was there in black and white. I hung up and stared at the floor, hearing the refrigerator hum louder than usual. My mind started replaying every conversation with Mark. His easy smiles, his compliments about the house. The way he said, It's beautiful, sir. Not many people your age hold on to property like this. At the time, I thought it was admiration. Now I realized it was appraisal. I poured another cup of coffee, though it had gone cold hours ago. My hands shook so badly the mug clinked against the table. For a few minutes, I let the anger take over. I slammed my palm against the desk, once, twice. The sound echoed through the house, sharp and lonely. Then I stopped, because anger burns fast and leaves you with nothing but smoke. I opened my phone's voice recorder again. June the 16th, 8:45 a.m. Car transferred to Lydia Ellison. Filed by Mark. Power of attorney forged or manipulated. My voice cracked. Heading to Marina. Before I left, I stood in front of Mary's photo again. Her smile looked softer than ever. I whispered, You'd tell me to breathe. You'd tell me not to yell at her. You'd say love doesn't erase truth. It just delays it. Outside, the air was thick with the smell of wet grass and salt from the coast. I locked the front door, even though the irony stung. What was I locking anymore? As I started the old truck, a seagull landed on the mailbox and screeched loud enough to cut through the morning stillness. I took it as a sign. Warning or blessing, I didn't know which. Driving toward the marina, I made one promise to myself. If they had turned my love into paperwork, then I would turn their paperwork into proof. And if I had to walk into her wedding to save what was mine, I'd do it. With the same calm precision I used to build the foundation of this house, brick by brick. Because grief had already taken my wife. I wasn't going to let greed take her memory. By the time I reached the marina parking lot, the sky had already turned that blinding Carolina blue that makes even heartbreak look picturesque. Boats rocked gently in the water. White ribbons fluttered along the dock, and someone was testing a sound system. The same kind of love song they play in perfume commercials. I didn't go inside. Not yet. I parked across the street, rolled the window down, and just watched. Lydia was there in a light blue dress, phone in hand, hair pinned up with the same silver clip her mother once wore. And standing beside her, smiling, shaking hands, charming every vendor within reach, was Mark Ellison. He looked exactly like the kind of man who thought confidence was the same thing as integrity. I sat there long enough to memorize every detail. Then I started the truck and drove straight downtown. The Charleston County Legal Center sits across from a line of oak trees and a bakery that always smells like sugar and regret. Inside, the halls were full of echoes. Shoes on tile, doors shutting, people whispering names like prayers. I found Henry Parker's office 2 floors up. Henry had been my colleague 20 years ago when we designed coastal homes together. He'd gone into law after his wife's stroke. "Easier on the back, harder on the conscience," he used to say. He looked up when I walked in, eyebrows knitting immediately. "John Turner, I'll be damned. You look like a man carrying bad news." "Not bad," I said, sitting down. "Just stolen." I laid out everything. The phone call, the missing folders, the DMV confirmation, the upcoming wedding. Henry didn't interrupt. He just kept nodding slowly, the way lawyers do when the pieces already fit, but they're giving you the mercy of catching up. When I finished, he said, "First thing, don't confront her. If what you're saying is true, confronting them now just helps them finish the job." He opened his laptop and started typing. "Mark filed a quitclaim deed digitally," he explained. "South Carolina allows electronic notary verification. No physical signature required if the platform is certified. All it takes is one forged identity check and a fake email." My stomach dropped. "So, you're saying they transferred it already?" "Not yet," he said. "Filed, not recorded. Which means we've got a window. If we can prove coercion or forgery before the record posts, the county can freeze it." I pulled out the blue folder from my bag. Duke Energy bills, Allstate insurance, the 2020 mortgage satisfaction letter, even a photo of Mary holding the paid-in-full envelope. Henry flipped through them and nodded. "Perfect. You're still your own best witness." Before I left, he said, "John, do me one favor. You're a builder by nature. Treat this like a rebuild. Foundation first, walls later. You can't save her yet, but you can save the structure." I stopped by a notary clerk's office on my way home, a small storefront next to a pawn shop. The clerk, a woman in her 40s named Dana, looked up when I mentioned Mark's name. "Oh, him," she said. "Yes, he came in here yesterday with a young woman. She didn't say much. I remember, because he kept talking over her. Real estate stuff, right?" I nodded carefully. "Did she sign anything?" "2 documents. I verified her ID, but she looked uncomfortable. You might want to talk to the recorder's office." Something felt off. I thanked her, and she slid me a sticky note with her name and work number. "If anyone asks, you didn't get this from me," she said quietly. Driving home, the pieces started aligning like a cruel puzzle. Every signature, every stamp, every missing document. They all traced back to one desperate man and one trusting daughter. When I pulled into my driveway, I saw the reflection of my own house in the truck mirror. Solid, silent, and somehow smaller than I remembered. I opened the door, took out a small spiral notebook, and wrote across the cover in thick black letters, "Ledger." First page, June 16th, 9:32 a.m. Met Henry Parker. Legal freeze possible. Need notarized evidence, receipts, and property tax proof. Next step, county recorder verification. Then I poured myself a cup of cold coffee, walked to the back window, and stared at the marigolds still standing after the storm. "I'll fix it, Mary," I whispered. "But this time, I'm building something they can't tear down." The pen in my hand didn't shake anymore. By the time the ink dried, the plan had already begun. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. Not from rest, from clarity. The kind that only comes when heartbreak turns into purpose. The house was quiet, except for the faint ticking of the clock and the steady hum of the refrigerator. My only witnesses. I brewed black coffee, opened my ledger, and wrote across the top of a clean page, "Rebuild the foundation." Then I began. At 6:45 a.m., I logged into my online banking portal. The numbers stared back at me. One line glowing red. Pending transfer. $87,000. The sender was my joint household account. The recipient, Ellison Holdings, LLC. My chest went cold. That wasn't a person. That was a shell company. A fake structure built to look legitimate. I took screenshots of every page, timestamp visible. Saved them into a new folder. Proof, Sequence 11. Next, I pulled out my old USB drive from the drawer. Scratched, but still working. It had once held family photos, Mary's garden videos, Lydia's birthday recordings. Now it would hold something else entirely. Insurance policies, mortgage proof, and a digital copy of every document Mark thought he'd erased. By 7:30 a.m., I was on the phone with Henry Parker. He answered before the first ring finished. "Morning, John. I didn't expect to hear from you this early." "Mark has a company," I said flatly. "Ellison Holdings, LLC. He's using it to receive my money." I could hear him typing fast. "That's good, actually. Well, not good, but traceable." "He's overplayed his hand. LLC filings are public. We can pull ownership records. Within minutes, he sent me a screenshot. Registered 3 weeks ago in his name. Business purpose, property management and resale. Address, a P.O. box linked to a rental office near the marina." "John," Henry said, "you're sitting on a gold mine of evidence. But let's tighten it. Go to the car dealership. Ask for the title history." I drove to the BMW dealership on King Street, the same one where I'd bought the car with Mary. The manager, an older man named Tom, recognized me instantly. "John Turner. Haven't seen you in ages. You trading in already?" I forced a small smile. "Just checking a title transfer. My son-in-law might have done something stupid." He pulled up the record. "Well, I'll be—" "Yeah, I see it here. Transfer request came through 2 days ago. New title pending. But the odd thing is, it lists Ellison Holdings as the buyer. Not a person. Can you print that?" I asked quietly. He hesitated. "Not supposed to. But for you?" He leaned closer, lowered his voice. "You didn't get it from me." The printer whirred, slow and loud. I folded the paper neatly, slid it into my ledger, and wrote, "June 17th, 10:02 a.m. Dealership verification. Buyer, Chatkirk Ellison Holdings." By noon, I was back home scanning everything into digital folders, labeling each one with precision. Bank proof, car title, LLC record, notary statement. Every file had a matching line in the notebook. That afternoon, I called Dana, the notary clerk. Her voice came through nervous but clear. "Mr. Turner, I checked the log. The man, Mark, used a secondary ID to sign. That's illegal here unless verified. The woman barely spoke. Would you be willing to testify?" I asked, a pause. "If subpoenaed, yes. But quietly, please. I don't want trouble." I thanked her, then added her name to the witness list in my ledger. By the time the sun set, my dining table looked like a war desk. Binders, receipts, post-it notes, highlighted documents, even the coffee rings forming their own kind of map. The air was thick with tension, but under it all was something stronger. Order. That night, I placed the USB drive into an envelope labeled "Insurance Copy" and mailed it to Henry's office. Return receipt requested. Then I slipped a second copy into the back panel of Mary's old picture frame, the one that always hung slightly crooked above the fireplace. At 10:23 p.m., I recorded another entry on my phone. Tomorrow, June 18th, the wedding. I'll go as her father, not her fool. The evidence is ready. The court freeze will trigger before noon. Let him think it's a perfect day. By the time he says I do, the county will say you can't. I looked around the living room, quiet and familiar. "Mary," I whispered, "you'd have told me to fight clean." "I'm trying." Then I shut off the lights and sat in the dark for a long moment, hearing the faint sound of waves against the shore miles away, the tide turning. Tomorrow, it wouldn't just be her wedding day. It would be the day I took my life back, one signature at a time. The morning of June 18th began too calm for what it was about to hold. The light through my blinds was soft and golden, the kind of light Mary used to call wedding light. I stood in that glow for a long moment, feeling both its warmth and its weight. It was the perfect day to lose everything, or to take it back. I dressed carefully. White shirt, navy tie, the one I wore when Lydia graduated college. My hands didn't tremble as I buttoned the cuffs. I looked in the mirror and whispered, "You won't yell. You'll show." That became my anchor. At 8:04 a.m., a message buzzed on my phone. "Dad, please come. I want you to walk me down the aisle. It'll mean the world to me." For a second, I almost believed it was just a wedding day, that everything would make sense again. Then I saw the small notification underneath. Ellison Holdings' withdrawal attempt declined. The freeze was working. I replied to her text with one word: always. The drive to the Charleston Marina was quiet. Too quiet. I didn't play the radio. The sound of the tires on wet asphalt felt like the only rhythm my thoughts could handle. When the marina came into view, I saw the white tents, the floral arches, the shimmer of the harbor water. It looked beautiful. Beautiful in the way lies often do. I parked a block away, kept my briefcase beside me for a minute, then opened it once more to check. Blue folder, ledger, copies, and the flash drive. Everything was in order. I whispered, "Paper over pride," and stepped out. Guests were already arriving when I walked in. The air smelled of salt, roses, and champagne. The sound of laughter hit like static. I blended into the background, nodding politely at strangers who thought I was just another proud father. Then I saw her. Lydia stood near the altar, her dress simple and elegant. She looked like her mother for a split second. Same tilt of the chin, same fragile confidence. My throat tightened. She saw me and smiled through tears. "You came?" she mouthed. I nodded. But behind her, at the end of the aisle, stood Mark. Polished, confident, holding an envelope that didn't belong at a wedding. County issue beige, folded twice. I moved closer to the refreshment table, pretending to grab water, and overheard a conversation that froze me. "Savannah property closes Monday," one man said. "Already liquidating?" another replied. Mark's name floated between them like a bad smell. I stepped outside, heart pounding, and called Henry. "He's pushing the transfer now," I said. Henry's voice came fast. "Already saw it. He filed the deed this morning. The clerk flagged it the moment your injunction hit. It's frozen, John. He doesn't know yet." I looked at the sky. "Then let's keep it that way until it counts." When I went back inside, the music had changed. The officiant was calling everyone to their seats. Lydia turned toward me, her bouquet trembling slightly in her hands. "Dad," she whispered, "you'll still walk me, right?" I offered my arm. "Of course." The string quartet began playing. Each step down that aisle felt heavier than the last. Every head turned toward us. Friends, relatives, strangers, and somewhere in the front row, Mark's grin widened. It wasn't a groom's smile, it was a merchant's satisfaction. We stopped at the altar. Lydia kissed my cheek and took his hand. I stepped back, folding my arms, watching every move, every glance. The officiant began. "We are gathered here today." My phone buzzed once in my pocket. Henry's message flashed across the screen. "Court freeze confirmed. Bank transaction blocked. You've won." I looked up at Mark. He had no idea that his perfect day had already expired. He straightened his tie, adjusting the cufflink I'd seen him flaunt last Thanksgiving. His confidence was almost beautiful in its ignorance. Lydia's voice trembled through the vows, but she smiled. Everyone saw a daughter beginning her new life. Only I knew she'd been led into a cage built from paperwork and deceit. When the officiant asked if anyone had any reason these two should not be joined, the world held its breath. The ocean breeze stilled. Even the gulls outside seemed to pause mid-cry. I didn't move yet. Not yet. I let the silence hang like a curtain, heavy and deliberate. Before walking to the front row and placing my blue folder on the pew where the sunlight hit just right. Tomorrow, they would call it a wedding. But for me, it would always be the exhibit. The day, the truth. Finally got an audience. The officiant's voice faded. Somewhere between the words, by the power vested in me and husband and wife. My pulse drowned him out. The breeze shifted, the scent of salt water and lilies sweeping through the tent. Lydia's hands trembled as she held her bouquet. Mark stood tall, chin lifted, the faint smirk of a man who thought the universe was still under his control. His confidence was almost rehearsed, every breath timed to the rhythm of applause that hadn't even happened yet. He didn't notice me reach down to the pew beside me, didn't see the blue folder in my hand, didn't hear the small click of my phone starting a recording. He didn't see me step forward until my shadow crossed the white aisle. "Before you say the last words," I said softly. My voice carried farther than I expected. The officiant froze mid-sentence. Lydia turned, her expression melting from joy into confusion. A few guests whispered. Cameras shifted. I walked forward, not rushing, not shaking, one step at a time. "There's something that belongs to me in this ceremony, and it isn't the bride." "Dad," Lydia whispered. "Please don't." "I have to," I said. "Because before there's a marriage, there's a crime." Mark laughed, a practiced laugh. "Sir, this isn't the time. This is exactly the time," I said. I opened the folder, laid the first document on the altar beside the marriage license. "This," I said, "is the deed to my house. Filed without consent. Forged signature. Power of attorney signed under coercion." I slid the second sheet across the polished wood. "This is the title transfer for my car, sold to your company, Ellison Holdings, using my funds. And this," I lifted the last page, the printout of the blocked transaction, "is proof that the court froze every account you thought you emptied this morning." A silence fell so heavy, it felt physical. Lydia's bouquet slipped from her fingers. The thud of flowers against the floor echoed like a gavel. Mark's grin faltered. "This is ridiculous." "It's recorded," I said, holding up my phone. "Your name, your company, your timestamp, every word backed by a notary and a witness who remembers you talking over my daughter while she signed." Someone in the crowd gasped. A few guests stood. The officiant stepped back, murmuring something about calling security. Mark took a step toward me, lowering his voice. "You don't want to do this here." I didn't move. "You did it here," I said quietly. "You used my daughter, my house, my life, right here in front of God and everyone. This is just the receipt." He glanced around, realizing eyes were turning against him. Lydia was crying now, shaking her head. "Mark," she whispered, "tell me he's lying." He tried to speak, but the words didn't come out right. His confidence cracked like glass under heat. I turned to the crowd and raised the final sheet. Henry's email, printed and sealed. For anyone who doubts, the court order went through at 9:47 this morning. Everything's frozen. Every asset, every account, every contract under Ellison Holdings is under review for fraud. 2 officers in plain clothes entered the tent from the marina walkway, their badges barely visible. Henry must have moved faster than I'd asked. They walked straight to the front, calm but certain. "Mr. Ellison?" one said. Mark's last smile disappeared. He tried to back away, but the aisle was too narrow and the eyes too many. Lydia stepped aside without a word. As they led him out, the guests whispered like a breeze through dry leaves. I stood still, watching until the doors closed behind him. The sound of the ocean returned, steady and merciless. Lydia was still crying. I stepped closer, but not to comfort her. Not yet. "You didn't lose a husband today," I said softly. "You just avoided a sentence." The officiant didn't speak. Nobody did. The only sound was the faint rustle of paper as the wind lifted one of the documents from the altar and carried it to the floor. I picked it up, folded it, and slipped it into my pocket. "This ceremony is over," I said quietly. Then, turning to the crowd, "But the truth, she's just getting started." And as I walked out into the sunlight, I didn't feel anger or victory. Just a strange, heavy calm. The kind that comes when the storm you've been waiting for finally breaks, and you realize you're still standing. The sunlight outside hit me like a confession. Too bright, too honest, stripping away every shadow I had carried for weeks. The air smelled like salt and roses crushed under shoes. Behind me, the tent was a murmur of voices, whispers that blurred into the sound of the tide. Ahead, the marina stretched out into the glittering water, calm, indifferent, endless. I walked until I reached the edge of the dock, the wood warm under my shoes. I could see the reflection of the wedding arch behind me in the ripples, still dressed in flowers, still pretending it was meant for love. I stood there a long time, breathing in the kind of silence that only comes after truth detonates. Henry called before I could even take my first step off the pier. "John," he said, his voice low but steady, "the sheriff just confirmed it. They've got him on 2 counts, fraud and falsified notarization. He'll be processed tonight." I didn't speak. I just watched a gull dive for something it would never reach. "John?" Henry said again. "I heard you," I finally said. "Thank you." He hesitated. "You did what you had to." I ended the call without another word. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even relieved. I just felt empty, like the house after Mary's funeral. The kind of emptiness that hums with memory. When I turned back toward the tent, I saw Lydia standing by the path. Her mascara had run, her dress wrinkled, bouquet gone. She looked smaller somehow, like the child who once used to wait for me at the end of the driveway with her backpack too big for her shoulders. She didn't say anything at first, just walked toward me slowly, barefoot, holding the hem of her dress in one hand. "He said it was just business," she whispered. "He told me you'd understand, that it was paperwork," I nodded. "It was paperwork. And that's exactly why I caught him." She looked down, wiping her eyes. "I didn't know, Dad, I swear." "He said, I know what he said." I put my hands on her shoulders, gentle but firm. "You wanted to believe in something again? So did I. The difference is, I stopped trusting words that come without receipts." Her lip trembled. "You hate me, don't you?" I shook my head. "I could never hate you, Lydia. But I won't protect lies anymore. Not even for love." The crowd had thinned behind us. Only a few guests lingered, whispering apologies they didn't owe me. Someone from catering quietly began to take down the decorations, flowers falling petal by petal into the water. We walked to the parking lot together in silence. My old truck was still there, stubborn as ever. The car that was supposed to be mine was evidence now, locked up behind police tape. When we reached the door, Lydia stopped. "What happens now?" "You go home," I said. "You learn. You rebuild. You start from truth this time. And you?" "I'll clean up what's left." She nodded, then did something I didn't expect. She hugged me. Tight. Desperate. The kind of hug you give when you realize what love was supposed to feel like all along. I held her for a long moment, then let her go. She walked away toward her friend's car, her veil catching the wind like a ghost of what might have been. I waited until she was gone before I got in the truck. As I turned the key, I caught my reflection in the rear-view mirror. My eyes looked older, but steadier. Maybe that's what justice does. It doesn't make you younger. It just gives you your face back. The radio came on automatically, playing some old Sinatra tune about luck and loss. I let it play. The marina faded behind me, and the sky stretched open over Charleston, washed clean after too many storms. I didn't drive home right away. I stopped by the courthouse first, handed the clerk a sealed envelope marked evidence copy, and signed the receipt myself. Then I walked outside, leaned against the truck, and watched the sun dip into the horizon. No applause, no anger, just the quiet satisfaction of knowing that the truth had clocked in for work and done its job. Mary would have called it peace. I called it survival. That night, the house felt like it had been exorcised. The smell of salt still clung to my clothes, and somewhere down the street, a sprinkler hissed against the grass, steady as breathing. I sat at the kitchen table with the blue folder open in front of me, papers neatly stacked, everything back in its place. The only sound was the clock over the stove, ticking off the seconds of a life that finally belonged to me again. I made tea instead of coffee, poured it slow, the way Mary used to when she wanted me to calm down. Steam rose from the cup, and for the first time in weeks, my hands didn't shake. The ledger sat beside me, half filled, half finished, and I wrote on the next line, June 18th, property saved, accounts frozen, truth recorded. The ink bled slightly into the paper, spreading like roots. My phone buzzed once on the counter. A message from Lydia. I'm sorry for everything. I can't sleep. I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I love you. I stared at the words for a long time. Then I typed back, sleep. We'll talk tomorrow. Love you too. There was no anger left, just a dull ache where it used to live. I knew she'd carry her own punishment long after the courts were done with Mark. Some debts time collects quietly. Before bed, I walked through each room, touching the walls like I was reintroducing myself to them. The living room still smelled faintly of polish and dust. The hallway where Lydia used to hang her school drawings looked smaller. The paint faded in the shapes where tape once held her crayon sons and stick figure families. I stopped at Mary's photo on the mantel. The glass caught the low light, reflecting a man I barely recognized. Tired, lined, but still standing. I touched the frame and whispered, "It's done. He's gone." We kept the promise. Outside, the marigolds were open again, petals glowing under the porch light. They had survived another storm. I opened the window and let the night air in. It carried the faintest hint of ocean and something sweeter. Freedom, maybe. At midnight, I sat down in the old recliner, set my phone to record, and spoke quietly into it. Today was supposed to be my daughter's wedding. Instead, it was the day I found my life's worth written down in ink and signatures. People think revenge is loud, but it isn't. It's patient. It waits until truth can walk in wearing its own shoes. I paused, then smiled, small and tired. If you ever find yourself betrayed by the people you die for, remember this. You can't control what they sign, but you can decide what you stand for. Paper fades. Proof doesn't. I ended the recording, saved it under a new file name, Aftermath. The house settled around me, creaking softly as the temperature dropped. Somewhere outside, a car passed, headlights sweeping briefly across the window. Then gone. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and for the first time since Mary's funeral, I felt peace that didn't need to explain itself. Tomorrow would bring court hearings, statements, repairs. But tonight, there was nothing left to defend, just me, the house, and the steady heartbeat of a clock that no longer sounded like a countdown. The next morning began with light instead of noise. No phone calls, no court alerts, no hollow greetings from people pretending to understand. Just light, pouring through the kitchen window, landing on the old oak table where I'd spent nights plotting and recording my own proof of survival. I poured coffee again, out of habit more than need. It didn't taste bitter this time. It just tasted real. I sat at the same spot where Lydia had once done her homework, where Mary and I used to argue gently about bills and recipes, and let the quiet fill in all the places that guilt and fear had emptied. At 9:15, a knock came at the door. It was a courier, envelope in hand, crisp suit, polite smile. "Delivery from Parker and Associates," he said. I signed without asking questions. Inside was the official stamped order. Property reinstated. Civil damages pending. No contest from defendant. At the bottom, Henry had scribbled in pen, "Case closed, my friend." H.I. folded the paper carefully and slipped it into the ledger, the same way you close a wound once it stops bleeding. Then I opened a fresh page and wrote across the top, Phase 2. Under it, I listed 3 things. Repaint living room. Call Lydia. Start living again. Simple things. Honest things. By mid-morning, I drove to the hardware store on Meeting Street, picked out a gallon of Seaside White, the same shade Mary had once chosen for our bedroom. The clerk asked if I needed help carrying it. No, I said. I've carried heavier. Back home, I changed into old jeans and a paint-splattered t-shirt, rolled the first stroke onto the wall, and watched the old color disappear. Every motion felt like sanding down the past, smoothing the edges where betrayal had left splinters. While the paint dried, I called Lydia. She answered on the second ring, voice small, uncertain. "Dad, I'm here," I said. "You okay?" A pause. Then a whisper. "I don't know. Everything feels broken." "Then we'll fix it," I said. "One thing at a time." She started to cry softly. "I don't deserve you. Maybe not. But you've still got me," I said. We talked for half an hour. Not about Mark, not about court, just about her mother and the marigolds, and how Charleston always smelled like rain before it forgave you. When she finally laughed, a small, fragile laugh, it felt like the first true sound in this house in years. That evening, after she hung up, I walked outside. The porch boards creaked under my weight, but the sound no longer felt tired. The sun was low, the sky painted in bands of gold and pink. The marigolds moved with the wind, bowing but never breaking. I sat on the steps and let the warmth of the day fade against my skin. Somewhere a church bell rang, maybe the same one that had been meant to ring for her wedding. Life has a cruel way of keeping its schedule, even when people don't. As the first stars appeared, I said it out loud, to the air, to Mary, to myself. It's over. And for once, those words didn't feel like an ending. They felt like a door finally unlocked from the inside. I went back in, closed the door gently, and turned the deadbolt. Not to keep anyone out this time, just to remind myself it was mine. Tomorrow, I'd buy new curtains, maybe a new chair, maybe nothing at all. The house was enough. And as I turned off the light, the clock in the kitchen ticked once, twice, then settled into rhythm. Steady, calm, alive. It's been 3 weeks since the wedding that never happened. You'd think time would drag when your whole world gets stripped down to legal filings and signatures, but peace moves fast once the noise is gone. The house smells different now. Fresh paint, lemon oil, and air that doesn't feel borrowed anymore. Every morning I sit by the kitchen window with my coffee, watching the light crawl across the same oak table where I once stared at forged papers and betrayal. The same place now holds nothing but a cup and a folded newspaper. The blue folder is gone, sealed in a court archive with Mark's name stamped on every page that once carried mine. But the ledger remains. I still write in it. Smaller notes now, quieter victories. June 25th. Slept through the night. July 1st, Lydia called again. Little things that matter more than settlements ever could. Lydia visits on Sundays. The first time she came after it all, she didn't say a word for almost 10 minutes. She just stood in the doorway holding a box of muffins and guilt. I didn't ask her to come in. I just said, "You're home." She cried right there, and I let her. Some apologies are better left wordless. Now she sits with me on the porch sometimes. We talk about her mother's garden, about how the marigolds always bloom stronger after storms. She told me she's seeing a therapist. She said she wants to learn how to stop choosing men who sound like lawyers. I told her that was the best degree she could ever earn. As for Mark, I haven't heard his name in days. The news called it a domestic financial scandal. I call it what it was. Greed with good grammar. Henry says the trial will be short. Too much paper, too little soul. The man built his empire on trust he never earned, and paper remembers everything. Sometimes, at night, I replay the voice note I recorded after the storm. Revenge isn't loud, it's patient. I didn't know back then that those words would end up being truer than any legal clause. Justice didn't roar. It whispered through quiet halls and stamped documents. A few nights ago, I found something tucked inside the ledger, Mary's handwriting on a torn grocery list. It just said, flour, lemons, and patience. I laughed. She always believed every mess could be fixed with baking or forgiveness. Maybe she was right. Maybe both are just different recipes for time. Last Sunday, Lydia helped me move some boxes into the attic. She found an old photo of her at 10 years old, covered in cake frosting, missing her front teeth. She laughed through tears and said, "You kept this?" I told her, "I kept everything. That's what fathers do. We keep proof that you were good before the world taught you otherwise." When she left that evening, she turned back at the gate and said, "You're not the same, Dad." I told her, "Neither are you. That's how you know it mattered." Tonight, I sat down to make one last entry in the ledger before closing it for good. July 9th, truth restored. House safe, heart quieter. The ink bled into the paper, steady and sure. I closed the cover, turned off the light, and listened to the hum of the refrigerator and the clock ticking like an old friend. People think revenge is about winning. It's not. It's about stopping the bleeding long enough to remember who you were before it started. And for the first time in years, when I looked at the empty chair across from me, I didn't see loss. I saw space, finally cleared, finally mine. Morning light feels different when you no longer wake up waiting for bad news. It's cleaner, quieter. I don't check my phone first anymore. I just sit on the edge of the bed and let the sunlight crawl up my hands, reminding me they're still my own. The ledger's closed, the case is finished, and the house, this house, finally belongs to peace. Today marks exactly 1 month since the wedding. That wasn't. The county clerk mailed me a formal letter last week. Stamped, signed, filed under my name, alone. The deed returned home, like a soldier after war. I framed it. Not out of pride, but out of gratitude. It hangs by the front door now, right where the family portrait used to be. Proof that not everything that falls apart stays broken. I've started fixing things I used to ignore. The leaky faucet, the loose hinge on the back door, the flickering light in the hall. Funny how revenge teaches you patience. Turns out, repairing a home isn't that different from repairing a life. You take one loose screw at a time, steady your hand, and stop cursing what cracked. Henry stopped by yesterday with coffee. He looked around the freshly painted walls and laughed. "You could rent this place out, John," he said. I told him, "Not this time. This one stays with me." He nodded like he understood something unspoken. Before he left, he handed me a small envelope. Inside was the final bill for his services, marked "Paid in Full." He'd already cleared it. "Consider it a victory tax," he said. "That man fights quietly, just the way I do." Lydia came over that evening, bringing lemon pie, Mary's recipe, the same one with her handwriting in the corner. "Don't rush the filling." We sat in silence as the smell filled the kitchen. When the timer dinged, Lydia looked at me and said, "It feels like Mom's here." I didn't answer because she was right. Some ghosts don't haunt you. They just sit with you long enough to make sure you're okay. After dinner, Lydia stood by the window, staring at the marigolds outside. "Do you ever think we'll stop remembering that day?" she asked. "No," I said. "But we'll stop bleeding from it," she smiled faintly. "That's good enough." We cleaned up together, slow and easy. When she left, she kissed my cheek and said, "Next Sunday, I'll bring something sweet again." I told her, "As long as it's not another fiancé." She laughed. A real laugh this time. Light and free. After she left, I stepped out to the porch. The evening air smelled of rain, and the sky had that deep, endless blue that only Charleston gets after sunset. The house lights glowed behind me, steady and warm. No alarms, no echoes, just home. I sat there until the first drop of rain touched my hand. It felt like a baptism, a quiet cleansing. I thought about Mary, how she'd probably tell me to rest, to stop fighting, to remember that sometimes surviving is the grandest revenge of all. Inside, the clock ticked, not counting down anymore, just keeping time. I closed my eyes, let the sound carry me, and whispered the same promise I made the night she died. I'll keep the house safe. This time, I meant it with every breath. Tomorrow, I'll repaint the porch, maybe fix the gate. Nothing urgent, just life. Slow, ordinary, honest. And for the first time in years, I can say this without hesitation, the storm's over, and I'm still here. Sometimes I replay that night in my head, the phone call, her voice trembling with excitement, the words that cut through the static like glass. Dad, I'm getting married tomorrow. The house and the car are sold. Back then, it felt like the end of everything. But now, standing here months later, it feels like the beginning of something I didn't know I'd lost. Myself. It's funny how betrayal has perfect timing. It never shows up when you're ready. It sneaks in wearing love's voice, using your child's laughter as a disguise. You don't see the knife until you feel the handle in your own hands. And still, somehow, it teaches you more about love than honesty ever could. The house is quiet tonight. The paint's dry, the repairs done, the ledger tucked away in a drawer. The marigolds out front are taller than they've ever been. I water them at dusk, the same time Mary used to, when the light softens and the world forgives you for surviving. Lydia called earlier. She got a new job in town, something small but steady. I'm starting fresh, she said. I told her, good. Just make sure this time the contracts you sign start with your own name. She laughed and said she's learning. I believe her. There's a peace that comes when you finally understand that closure isn't a door slamming shut. It's a lock you change yourself. I've changed mine, both on the door and in my life. No more joint signatures, no more blind trust. Just clarity, quiet, and a little bit of space for forgiveness to stretch its legs. Tonight, before sitting down, I found myself recording again. Not for proof, not for evidence, just for memory. The red light blinked, and I said softly, before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. Old habit, I guess. Maybe I just like the sound of a story closing the way it started, in my voice, on my terms. I looked around the room at everything still here. The lamp Mary bought at the flea market. The worn chair she refused to throw out. The same clock that once ticked through nights of fear, now marking minutes of calm. The sound doesn't make me anxious anymore. It's not counting down to anything. It's keeping rhythm with me. If someone had told me a year ago that my greatest lesson would come disguised as a wedding, I would have laughed them out of the room. But here I am, living proof that life doesn't always hand you fairness. Sometimes, it just hands you a file folder and a second chance. I used to think revenge was about getting even. Now I know it's about getting back. Back to yourself, your ground, your truth. The real victory isn't what you take from someone who wronged you. It's what you stop letting them take from you. So if you're listening, and I know some of you are, sitting somewhere in the dark, wondering how to climb out of the hole someone else dug, remember this. You don't need to fight like a hero. You just need to hold the line long enough for the truth to arrive. It always does. It might not shout, but it never whispers in vain. I closed the recorder, placed it on the table, and smiled. The first line of this story started with a sale I never agreed to. The last one ends with something money can't buy back. my peace, my home, my name. And for the first time in a long time, when I looked around this house, I didn't see what was taken. I saw what stayed.